The biggest game to our Georgia Bulldogs fans takes place right here in Atlanta, Georgia, as Clemson and Georgia come to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. The line set right at 2 touchdowns, 13 and a half, 14 and a half, wherever you're looking. And I'm sure it'll change as we get closer to game time. But a 2-touchdown underdog Clemson comes in. And you want to talk about teams that have been doubted. We talked about 2 of them and kind of playing with house money. I don't think there's a team this entire week playing with more house money than the Clemson Tigers, because frankly, everyone expects them to lose by multiple touchdowns, even Vegas. But you don't get a lot of bad rap. There's no so even Texas A&M loses to Notre Dame, their playoff chances take a huge hit. If Clemson loses to Georgia, everyone's going to be like, yeah, that's what we expected. Georgia's the best team in the country. You want to talk about house money with a talented team? This is the number one on the entire slate. Now, that doesn't mean I think they're going to win, but I'm just saying if you want to talk about playing with house money, when you play the Georgia Bulldogs, you are normally playing with house money.
I agree with you in a lot of sense, except that I don't think that is how Clemson fans see it. I don't think, especially because Dabo's been there, done that. Again, one of a few coaches who have won a national championship. The standard at Clemson isn't just to, get run over by Georgia, pick up your, teeth, and then go try and win a weak ACC. They want to beat Georgia. This is still, maybe the Clemson fans who were there before Dabo know how big this is a rivalry. They played for a lot of years. And even more so now that Clemson kind of does have expectations to win a national championship, I do think it's not going to be the end of the world for Clemson, because they can win this game and easily get a first round, especially with Florida State losing to Georgia Tech. So, it's not going to be the season over, but I do think more so than a lot of other schools in terms of the house money argument that Clemson they got pressure, even though they're expected to lose. Everybody expects them to lose. I still think they've got pressure, especially because of the underachieving in recent years.
I think Clemson thinks that they have a chance to win this game, and I think they have the athletes to believe that. I think everyone in that locker room isn't necessarily treating it like that, but when you talk about house money and how people view it, I mean, they're coming in knowing they're the underdogs, chip on their shoulder. I don't think there's any pressure on them to win. I think there's pressure on them I think they're going to be able to play free in this game. I think that's the biggest thing. I think they're going to be able to play free, loose, and say, hey, it's us against the world. And I think that's a huge advantage in college football, especially in week 1. And I think on the flip side, you're a Georgia team, knowing you have big games on the road against Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, that everyone's talking about, especially Alabama early in the season. This is an easy one, and Kirby Smart does this better than anyone, making sure you don't overlook. But this is an easy one to overlook because of how Clemson's been, because of the bigger games you have on the schedule, particularly Alabama coming up on the road early in the year. It's an easy one to overlook, and I think Clemson's coming in there. They're going to come in there with their heads on fire. I don't think they're going to win. I'm not going to sit here and say Clemson is going to win this football game. I do think they have an opportunity to make it closer than people think, and I've been saying that all off season, because I do think they have the defense to make Georgia's kind of we're still I want to know what Georgia's offense looks like, right?
Yeah.
You lose Brock Bowers, you lose Lad McConkey, Mike Bobo. There were questions about how much they love him. You do have Carson Beck. You're always going to have a great offensive line. So, but running back, Etienne, there's rumor he's not going to play.
If there's one thing I'm not worried about, it's a Georgia, some no-name running back from Georgia coming out and being like, who the hell is this guy? Because, like you mentioned, that offensive line at Georgia can go toe-to-toe with any defensive line, and they're going against one of the top defensive line, not Florida State's defensive line, Clemson's defensive line, who actually puts guys in the NFL year after year. So they will have, a tall task against Clemson's defensive front. But if anybody can handle it, it's Georgia's offensive line. I am also not worried about, because there's a little guy named Oscar Delp, 5-star guy. He is going to slot in there. I'm forgetting the tight end coach's name, but he's heralded as one of the best tight end coaches in the nation. Georgia's going to do what it's doing, what it has been doing under Bobo, and that's not doing anything sexy. They're gonna run the football, and they're gonna pass off of it. And when you've got a veteran guy in Carson Beck leading the operation, I have the utmost faith in them getting the job done. I think if anything, and you're a gambling man, you bet the Clemson first half, because I do think Clemson still has a top 10 roster. I mean, it's not like, all this noise about the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness, and God's name, image, and likeness. It's a big laugh about Clemson. We're still forgetting they recruit at the highest levels, and Clemson puts talent in the NFL at a rate that very few can match. So there's still got guys that are playing on Sundays on that side of the ball. who is Cade Klubnik and who is Garrett Riley? We've been waiting and seeing what are they going to do? Who are they going to be different from this year than last year? You like to say the insanity quote. Let's see it, Clemson, because they keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I do think Clemson's defense is good enough to maybe corral Georgia's offense for a little bit, not the whole game. If Clemson is going to have a chance, they're going to have to lean on their offense a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to have to score over 20 points, which if you're thinking about Clemson's offense against an elite defense, that's not something they've been able to do. I mean, I look back, and I said this earlier in the offseason, I think the formula it's going to take for Clemson to really make this close and potentially have a chance to win is going to be the script that we've seen from Auburn's year after year.
Yeah.
And like you see in a lot of underdogs, it's like it's going to have to be a lot of misdirection. You're going to have to
pull out all the stops.
Yeah, I mean, every single trick play that you have in the book that you've been working on all offseason, it's going to have to work. And it's not going to necessarily, it doesn't have to be wide receiver, double passes and stuff like that. But that's not always what you see from Auburn. And it's just like, big chunk play there.
Maybe a fake punt.
Yeah.
Early in the game to kind of keep a drive going.
Whatever it is, like you're going to have to pull it up and you're going to have a little bit of luck to win this game or keep it close enough to where you have a chance to win this game. But I do think defensively, they're going to be able to give Georgia issues for most of the game. I do think Georgia's going to have a few drives where they end up scoring a touchdown. And if they get a turnover, it could get ugly.
Yeah.
But if Clemson can hang on to the ball, avoid turnovers, and pull out a couple of weird little plays where it's like 50-yard chunk plays, however they do it, whatever they have in their bag, they're going to need it this week. I like 27-14 because I think Vegas is genuinely right in these type of games. And I think the line at 13.5, I think it's going to be a 13-point game. I think it's very close at half, maybe 13-7, maybe even 7-7 or something like that. And I think Georgia ends up winning by 2 scores with a big second half.
Yeah, I don't think that's too dissimilar from my thinking. I do think the first half is going to be very close. Georgia fans are going to be a little scared. And Georgia
noon kickoff too, kind of weird.
Kirby Smart knows what this game means. Like I said, these teams do have a rivalry that some people might not remember, younger fans. Kirby Smart knows. Kirby Smart knows what's at stake, and Kirby Smart knows who Dabo is. He's not underestimating him, and I know some Georgia fans and a lot of other people might be underestimating Clemson, but Georgia and their players are not. In fact, they are probably giving Clemson and Dabo Swinney more credit than they deserve because that's just how a Kirby Smart and Nick Saban coach teams usually operate. They've got stuff. They've got bulletin board stuff in there. Like, me right now sitting here and going, Georgia sucks. Georgia sucks. Georgia's going to come out with their hair on fire, especially after losing that SEC championship game. You think stomping Florida State was a kind of get back? Just wait until this. I think, something like 13-10 going into the half, and then they win like 37-17.
37-17.
Something like that.
I mean, hey, listen, if Georgia does that, they're going to put a lot of people on notice.
I don't want to give the exact score because I hate doing that, but something very close at half where like I'm going to be on Clemson on the first half when people are going to be like, whoa, Georgia Bulldogs. And then they're going to come out and just impose their will. And it's going to be an absolute slaughtering in the second half.
I just don't think it's going to be anything like the Oregon game we saw a few years ago in Dan Lanning's first year where they just came out and it was like, 35-0 at halftime. That was like a team that they could out physical and there was nothing that they could do to stop them just from running the ball, passing the ball, whatever they really wanted to do, they could do. I think there's going to be
this Oregon team much different than
I think this Clemson. I think
this Clemson team.
I think there's going to be some figuring things out that it's going to take, it's going to be a chess match there in the first half. And I think Georgia eventually has the athletes to figure it out on the offensive side of the ball where Clemson doesn't. And I think that's why they win by 2 scores.